There you go.
That's okay. So Nathan is one of the new contributors to Panorama, and you'll probably actually see some of his articles coming up in future editions of Panorama, so congratulations. So Nathan is a native of Kirkland, Washington, and a member of Pacific Northwest and Inland Northwest. He developed a fondness for reading, particularly car magazines like Car and Driver at a young age. He's the author of this month's The Power of Color, very good article, featuring relatively new to journalism, having spent much of his professional career in sales and marketing for the pharmaceutical and high-tech industries. 11 years ago, Nathan's love for cars proved too overpowering, so he founded Columbia Valley Luxury Cars, which deals primarily in Porsches. He's taken with Porsche engineering, focus on improvement and innovation, and his willingness to be unconventional, or its willingness to be unconventional. His personal favorite, just so everybody's well aware of this, 1971 91E Coupe, which made its way through numerous PC members. He's the married father of 4, loves to stay in shape, usually with outdoor challenges, including Go Ruck events, F3, and obstacle courses like Tough Mudder. So thank you once again for coming to join us.
Well, welcome.
One more thing. Sorry about this. So we're going to play a little game throughout the presentation today. So basically, after Nathan talks, we're also going to spend some time grading this car. We're going to ask you to write down what you think the value of this car is at the end of the show, and whoever gets the closest without going over gets a prize. So,
Thanks, Bob.
Good luck, Rob.
oh, it's a Porsche clock.
Ooh.
So, it'll be fine.
Okay. Everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I figured I'll do a mic that way I don't have to yell because I'm going to be talking a lot today. Thanks for the introduction. Again, my name is Nathan Mers. I come to you guys out of Seattle. But I'm a big fan of Boise because I split my time between Seattle and we have a home in the Tri-Cities, which has a climate very similar to Boise. And so I feel very at home here. And so we're going to talk kind of a 2-part presentation today. We'll do the first hour is really going to be about the market. What the hell is happening in this crazy market? We know it's up and down and sideways, all sorts of things. So we'll spend about an hour talking about the market. I just got back from Pennsylvania. I presented for Porsche Cars North America at Tech Tactics East at their distribution and training center. It's kind of a fun little event. Got spoiled. They kind of snuck in a new GT2 RS that we got to kind of look at and play with. Couldn't take any photos of, but it was kind of fun. And so we'll talk about that. Then we'll take a short break. We'll go do the little lineup probably with the door code and get some more coffee. And then we'll do a sort of a hands-on, what we're going to look at whether you're buying or selling a car. And so Bob Penegast was very generous and allowed us to poke and prod at his car there. I said it's a little bit like putting your spouse up on display and having a bunch of people pick and give feedback. So I appreciate that very much. So let's get this kicked off. Larry, you want to change it? Larry's our remote today. So basically a quick overview. Anyone been to one of my presentations before? Oh, look at that. I can recycle all my bad jokes. Okay, good. We'll talk a little bit about who I am and why I'm worth the $5 you paid to be here. So it's going to be worth about that. If you subtract out the free coffee and donuts, my advice will be worth about $3. I'll give you some basic caveats. We'll talk about what's hot in the market right now, what's not hot, and what's up and coming. We'll talk about the word bubble. Everyone loves that word bubble. We'll talk about prices, what they're doing. We'll talk about how to grade a car. And this will be sort of the academic part, and then we'll actually do it with an actual car, which will be fun. And then we'll do factors affecting price. So we'll do that. This will be our first hour. So with that, Larry, let's kick it off. So again, here's who I am. My basic story, probably like a lot of car people, I popped out loving cars. One of the times I was 3 years old, I just loved cars and just couldn't shake it. And I have this weird thing about reading. I'm really passionate about reading, and I got every car magazine ever written. And for whatever reason, if I ever read it, I remember it. So I could give you the specs on an '84 Dodge Caravan. I mean, it's just, it goes in my head and it doesn't come out, and it actually scares me sometimes because it's even, I literally was having a funny conversation with Vu Nguyen, who's the executive director of Porsche cars, or PCA, and he likes funny, goofy cars like me, and we were at dinner the other night, and next thing you know, we were discussing the relative merits of the Fiero 2M4 versus the 2M6. I thought, oh my God, what has happened to me? So luckily, I had this passion, and luckily my dad liked Porsches, and so he steered me on the right path. I didn't go down the Fiero path. You'll start seeing me more in Panorama. They've just put me up, so I'll be writing every month now. So I did a story last month on documentation and provenance. We did that. This month it's on color. Next month I'll give you a little preview. It's kind of a fun 20-year retrospective look at the 996. Have any 996 owners in here? Oh, good. You'll love the article. I'm a big fan of 996s, so you're not going to be kicked any longer, so this is good. So it's a very positive one. And I can say that because my very first 911 was a 75 911, and I'd go to gatherings like this as a young man, and the older, more seasoned members would tell me how terrible my car was. So I feel for 996 people. You know what I'm talking about, right? One of my personal passions, I love preservation class cars. So I prepare cars for parade and works. I showed 2 cars this year at parade in Spokane, and won first place with both my cars. So that's kind of fun. I like doing that. I'm prepping a car this year for Lake of the Ozarks. Anyone going parade this year? Oh my gosh! Wow. Okay. Missouri in July doesn't sound that appealing. I got to be honest. And then I guess how I make my living is I buy and sell Porsches. My store is based on the east side of Seattle, and I primarily focus on Porsche. I'll do the other occasional car, but I don't really like to, so Porsche is kind of my big passion. And so you think I'm not totally out of balance. I am married, I have 4 children, and I'm kind of a fanatic about running. Any runners in the group? Okay, good. I'm a passionate runner, obstacle course racer, that kind of thing. It keeps my OCD to a bare minimum. So with that, Larry, okay, some basic caveats. The market's really dynamic. It's moving very fast, so it's already out of date. My presentation is. I made some updates to it last night, so it's always moving. The other thing is I can't cover every nuance. You don't want to sit here for me to cover every niche or every model Porsche ever made. So with that said, if I don't mention a car you have or have a passion for, it doesn't mean I don't like it. It just means we didn't maybe get to it. The other thing is I've aimed this presentation at mass market Porsches. So I do another presentation where we get real drilled down on a particular, like the GT cars, or race cars. That's a whole nother presentation. So we're going to stick to the ones most of us have in our garages. Okay, so we won't touch on some of the really rare cars. The other thing is there's always an outlier. I always get someone in the crowd that raises their hand and says, well, at this auction, this car, we'll just invoke the outlier rule. There's always one of those. The other thing is we'll talk about buying a Porsche that fits your intended purpose. We'll drill down a little bit more about that, but one of the things I encourage people to do is buy a car that fits what you want it to do. Oftentimes I get people, particularly in the Porsche world, we're very blessed. There's a lot of affluence in this community, and so sometimes I'll get someone that goes out and spends all the money for a #1 condition car, and then they really want to autocross. It's like, it doesn't really make any sense, right? So we'll talk about that. And then again, these opinions are just simply my opinions, so they're worth the $3.10 you pay to be here. Okay, so overall market, simple answer, what's happening in the market. We've entered a plateau phase after 5 years of record growth. It was just truly, truly insane. But overall, some normalcy and sanity has returned, but there are still some crazy things. So I used to do a bunch of slides and charts and graphs, and I realized all these graphs show the same thing. Porsche market kind of flat, straight up like this. Didn't matter almost what kind of Porsche it was, and then now it's leveled off. Like, okay, I can cover that in 10 seconds. So think that, flat, up like crazy, level. There's your chart. Okay, a little more complex answer is that market preferences are shifting slightly. Buyers are more critical and they're more well-educated, and there's a greater shift towards originality and quality, which actually I think is a fun thing that's happening in the market. And so the basic way to look at this is in 2015, if a car had a crest on the hood, someone thought it was valuable. Now they still think it's valuable, but they're a little more critical, and they want to know what makes this particular one a good one. So the key takeaway word for today is nuanced. So people are trying to drill down a little bit, making a little bit smarter purchase. The peak of the market really being summer of 15. People thought, well, if I make a bad choice, it'll be worth more tomorrow anyway. Does this sound like real estate in Phoenix in 2006, right? Boise had that a little bit in the real estate market too, right? People thought, well, if I buy it, well, I can't make a wrong choice, it's worth more tomorrow. They're starting to learn that that's not necessarily the case. Okay, so what's hot? So we're going to talk about some things that are hot, not a particular genre of Porsche, but just qualities of a car that's really hot. You know, what do people want in the market right now? They want true number one and number two condition survivor cars. And we'll define conditions a little bit later. They like cars with patina, right? This is a funny one to me for a guy who likes Concours and all original perfect cars. I appreciate patina, but I struggle with it at the same time. But it's, I think this is a lot of the social media thing. Patinaed cars photo really well. If you like Instagram, they turn out really sweet, right? So yeah, it's kind of a funny one. The other thing is well-executed hot rods are doing really well. And it used to be if you built a hot rod, be it 356 or 911, you absolutely tank its value. If it's done well, they do well. Most of them are not done well and struggle to sell. We've had some record sales of some cars that would floor you because of their execution. The other one is cars as their own brand. This is kind of a weird one. Again, this is a social media phenomenon. I'm not a big social media person. In fact, my web guy always says, well, you got to do this and you got to do that, and it kills me. I'd rather be anonymous. But these are the cars where a person, it's like it has its own website, its own Instagram account, right? They have a whole build with 700 pages on some forum. And it sort of takes on a life of its own. It goes to events and it almost gets VIP parking because everyone knows this car. You know which kind of cars I'm talking about. They kind of create their own market. Magnus Walker would be kind of a perfect example of melding both personality and a car. So these are doing well in the market. Truly rare cars. Again, in 15, we thought it had a crest on the hood. It was rare. I'm going to break the news to you. Porsche is a mass market producer. There's very few truly rare cars. They're rare if you're used to collecting Corvettes or something, right? But still not hugely rare. So there are some cars that are truly rare, and those cars are doing well. Outrageous colors. If you read this month's panel, we talk about how color can make a difference. We'll talk specifically about this car later today, why this car may make a difference with its color. And then the other thing is restorations by the best. And again, in 15, everyone was shining at the car and selling it at auction. Now people are saying, well, who actually did the work? And I'm willing to pay for a premium product and a premium name. And it may not actually be any better than maybe the no-name car, but people want a name behind it. So that's what's hot. What's not? Number one is cars hyped is nice, but not. So these are what I politely call shiny turds. Right? We all know what a shiny turd looks like. It's a turd that's shiny. And but again, as the market was going hot, these things came out of the woodwork. People slapped paint or trim or seats in a car and said, "Oh, this is a Condition 1 collectible." No, it's a turd with shiny paint. Those cars are struggling in the market. In fact, this is one of the number one reasons people think prices have dropped, because they say, "Well, that car should bring more money." I'm like, no, it never should have brought that. It was never worth it. The other thing was sellers with bad reputations. This is actually one of my things I do like about social media. It cuts both ways, but it used to be the market was so hot, people would tolerate a seller, be it private party or a dealer that was arrogant, difficult, dishonest, because they thought, oh, if I don't buy it, someone else will. Now with the likes of Google and Yelp and all the forums, the online never forgets, right? So when people have bad reputation, people are shying away, even sometimes a good car because the seller has a bad rep, right? The other thing is sellers out of touch with current pricing. In fact, I put it in this morning in my presentation. You'll see it a little later, but I was chuckling. There's a guy with a 77 911 for sale in Portland. It's a 77 911 Targa, and I like mid-years, but probably the least desirable year of any air-cooled, and it's a Sportomatic. So he takes a 77 Targa Sportomatic in Guards Red, and he says, "You better know your pricing before you call me for $70,000. well, I think he might be owning that car for a while, right? I think it's bad history and questionable cars. So again, the internet doesn't forget. So there's a lot of cars that have passed through, 5 hands in 5 years, and you start wondering why, and you start realizing, history comes into play here a little bit. The other thing is there's some models with large oversupply. So the car market behaves like any other market. You're looking for a more balanced market. You have a seller's market if there's not much inventory. You have a buyer's market if there's too much inventory. And right now there are certain niches where there's just too much inventory. And again, restorations by unknowns and quick flips. So these were the cars that rolled through the auctions in 14 and 15. And to a non-Porsche file, they look great. You take it to a Porsche event and people are laughing behind your back, that car, right? Okay, let's go to the next one, Larry. Okay, there are some models that are still doing really, really well in the market. The G-body cars, so these are the 74 to 89, with the accordion style bumpers. These cars are doing really well. I gave a presentation about 5 years ago, and I thought they were going to throw fruit and rotten vegetables at me because I said something and they said I was an idiot. And I said, I think in the future, all genres of air-cooled 911s will be worth more similar money. Oh, you're an idiot. And I said, hold on. I said, I'm not to say that a 73 911T is going to be worth what a 73 911S is worth, but when it was, probably 14, when a 73 911T was worth 100 and a 74 911 was worth 15, it didn't make any sense to me. The 74 is not 8 times worse than the 73. And we're starting to see that now. The long-lived cars are cooled, and the G-body cars are kind of on fire. And so I think they're going to get closer to par to each other for similar quality. 964 manual coupes. Any 964 owners in here? Okay, good. I have a particular affinity for 964s. I worked at the Porsche dealer when these cars were new, and so I actually own 3 964s. I particularly like them. But yeah, it used to be you'd take a 964 again to a club outing. The funny story I tell, I'm mostly at Pacific Northwest. I tend to do more events with them, and I had a 964, and I was, 22, 23 years old or something. I was really proud of my car, and I went to an event. And some nice older member of the club came up, and he was, believe it or not, driving a new 996. And he put his kind of hand on my shoulder and said, son, one day when you work really hard, you can get a good 911. Wow. Welcome to the club. And he means well, he's still in the club, he's a nice guy, but I still remember him when I see him. I don't mention it to him. But yeah, the 964 owners were like 996 owners feel now. Everyone sort of denigrated them. And then the weirdest thing happened about 3 years ago. These same people that used to talk crap to me about my 964s came up and said, hey Nate, have you thought about 964s? They got the really cool classic fender and the big displacement dual plug motor and AC that actually works. They're a really cool car. And I go, yeah, same car they had since 1990. Hasn't changed. But the market perception of it changed, right? And because they were low for a long time, they just disappeared. And so they've gone crazy. A lot of people think it's Singer that's done it. Singer's part of it, but it's a whole host of other factors come together. The other fun one is transaxle cars. I have any transaxle fans in here? Good people, see? Same deal. For a long time, these cars were denigrated and didn't get treated well. And now they're starting to do pretty well. If you want to be floored at values, go try to buy an early 928 with a manual and Porsche interior. It will blow your mind what people are willing to pay for those cars right now. And even I'm seeing some pretty good numbers on normally aspirated early 944s. I mean, not big numbers, but it used to be the nicest one in the world couldn't crack $4 grand. And I'm seeing people pay 10, 12, 13, 14 grand for nice early 944s. It's kind of rewarding, actually. I like it. Early water-cooled cars are starting to come up. A little preview, I think I told you next month we'll have an article on the 996. But 986 and 996 cars, I think they've hit their floor and they've come off the floor. I would not make an investment strategy out buying warehouses full of 996s, but I think that they got cheaper than they deserve to be. And so I think they're great cars. 996 and 997 turbos never really fell out of favor, but have only gotten stronger. That same car now is 55. So, not a huge change, but pretty good change on a fairly late model car. And then the other one, 914s. You know, I bought a 914 2-liter about 10 years ago. I got a really nice 73 in Smyrna Green. And people used to make fun of me that I had this car. They'd say, well, how can a car with that few horsepower be any fun? And I said, well, you have to drive one. And I paid what was, people said was a lot of money then, and now I'm turning down offers like 4x of what I paid for it. So they're finally getting some respect. Probably in some ways like the other cars, they've been denigrated, they got abused for a long time. So these are the currently gaining models. Let's go to the next one here. Okay, cars that are holding strong. These cars are doing just fine in the marketplace. These would be the short and long wheelbase cars. 912s are doing well, 993s, 997s, 987s. And then all the GT cars are doing well, except 991.1s, because a lot of guys are converting to .2 cars. So there's a lot of, particularly 991 GT3s available in the market right now. So if you ever want to buy one of those, I think they'll hit the bottom in probably 6 to 9 months and be a reasonable buy. And again, a lot of these cars, like the long wheelbase cars, you know, why are they holding? Well, simply because they went up 400% or 500%. And you can't have any asset go up like that. So they're doing just fine. We still have some laggards here, Larry. That's our next one. Okay, so these cars are still cooling. 991s are cooling because they're just a late model car. They built a lot of them. 993 twin turbos, 930s, RSAs, and 89 Speedsters are mostly due to oversupply in the market. There's just a lot of them out there. We're sort of getting more to a more level market. If you were to look in 2015, the peak of the market, one of the indicators I like to look at is just available supply. So, and you can do this, this is just advice. You can go on a big aggregate site like an Auto Trader, eBay, something like that. So just for fun, one of the things I always do is go on Auto Trader and say, give me every, 911 from 81 to 98. Can't do before 80 because they don't have the right VIN. Okay. And at the bottom of the market, you did that search and you did nationwide, you got somewhere around 140 cars. So not a ton of cars for a 17-year production run, right, across the entire nation. Last summer, when the market really was oversupplied, that same search turned up about 700 cars. So still not a huge amount of cars, but we're talking a 4-fold, 5-fold increase of what was out there. That same search today returns about 450 cars. So we're moving more towards a more balanced market. But as an example, I looked this morning at 993s, 96 to 98, there's 125. There's a lot of 993s, right? 4Ss as an example, there were 25. So I mean, it gives you some sense. Same with 930s. I have an RS America, so I'm not knocking them, but and 89 Speedsters. Right now I think there's like 22 89 Speedsters for sale, which isn't a lot, but they only made 823 of them, so that's a fair number. Okay, next slide here, Larry. Okay, there are some great buys in the market. I think 986s and 996s are great buys if you get a good one. Again, when models fall out of favor, they fall out of favor for maintenance too. And like the kid working at the local Walmart has one, and things don't go so well. But if you can find a good one, I think they're never going to be any cheaper for a good quality car. The 997 and 987.2 cars, really due to concern about IMS on the earlier cars. I think it's overstated, but there's a lot of fear in the market. So the .2 cars, I think are going to do well. You want my prediction, a 997.2 will be worth well more into the future than a 991.1 will be. And they're starting to cross over now. So for example, a 12 997.2 C2S is worth more than a 12.5 C2S 999. So sort of an interesting change. The 915 era G-body cars, the holy grail in the impact bumper, people like the G50 transmission. I think it's overrated, and I can say that I own several of them. I like them, but I think 915s, when a 915 is good, it can be really good. The problem is most 915s aren't really good, and people go drive a 30-year-old 915 and say, well, this is crap. I said, no, you're driving one with a crappy 915. Right? So go drive a good 915. You can, like if you were to buy an 86 911 versus an 87, there's about a $5,000 difference between the two. Once you jump to a G50, I would buy the best one to find regardless of transmission. That's the way I look at that. The other one is open cars. In the collector car market, the mantra is always at the top goes down, the price goes up, right? Certainly true in the 356 world, although that's changing, believe it or not. When it comes to 911s, absolutely not true. The Cabriolets are the least valuable variant. So generally the coupe is worth the most, then the Targa, then the cab. And I don't know that that'll always be the case. I think right now people are still driving cars. They like the rigidity and kind of the purity of the design. But open cars can be bought at a discount. So I bought a couple open cars just because, for similar money I can buy a condition 1 open car for the money I might pay for a 2- closed car. And I think long term that might be a better play. So something to think about. And the other thing is previously hot models, if you can buy them for current market dollars. So if you're shopping, for example, a 993 twin turbo and a person thinks it's worth 175. Well, it's not 175, but if you can buy it for 120, you're going to do just fine. So sometimes you get a seller who kind of wakes up to the market realities. Okay, the word bubble, everyone loves this word bubble. It was all we could talk about for a long time. And my answer is no. A bubble pops, it's catastrophic, right? Again, this is real estate in Vegas in 2008. That's catastrophic. So the best analogy I use is think of a balloon, and you're blowing up the balloon, you're blowing it up, blowing it up. In 2015, we blew the balloon up so full that we just couldn't tie a knot. So we had to let a little bit of air out so we could tie a knot off. And that's, think of the market, right? So it's kind of a balloon, knots in it. I think it's gonna stay there for a while. Again, 15 was the peak. A lot of cars have flattened and shown a slight decline, but we're not seeing big declines. The best way, a lot of people think the decline's bigger than it is because people saw asking prices, but they weren't necessarily transactional pricing. So sellers that want to sell have to get more realistic with their ask price. But some of the asking prices weren't actually selling prices before anyway. We had a lot of speculators entering the market. You guys probably saw this even here. I would meet people all the time that knew nothing about Porsche. Maybe they're come from a background in Camaros or something, and they're like, I'm going to buy a couple of these rear-engine Porsches. Okay, right? That's kind of died off a little bit, so that doesn't hurt my feelings any. The other thing that's kind of weird is if you go out and look at the pricing in the market, most of the consumer sellers want more for their cars than dealers do, which sort of tells you there's something out of balance there. They're a little bit less in tune with what's happening. We talked about the inventory. There's greater inventory than there was at the peak of the market, but we're getting more towards a balanced market. And a balanced market is actually a good market. You don't want to be a buyer or a seller market. And then ultimately some of these growth rates, again, you can't have 100% value return year after year. It's not going to happen. The other thing is, when the market was good, we had these driver quality or low quality cars trading for strong money. That concerned me. So the example I use is, if someone tells me I bought a 10,000 mile, all original, fully documented 911 SC and I paid $125,000 for it, which sounds crazy. That doesn't concern me in the least, because you can't recreate that car. But when someone tells me they paid $50,000 for an unknown mileage, 7-owner, repainted, guards red SC Targa, that scares me, right? So we have a lot of that going on. Okay, so here's some of my predictions. Again, I think pricing is going to move more in line with market correct, but we still have a lot of out-of-touch sellers. I think a lot of Porsches were undervalued historically. Current values are closer to market correct. I'll give you, let's talk 996, right? Because 996s fell out of favor. You could buy an early 996 coupe, a pretty good one, not a perfect, but a good, palatable one, $16,000, $17,000. Well, come on. That car should have never been $16,000. It's more car. Because what the heck can you buy for $16,000? I don't know, a new Hyundai Elantra? I mean, it's just, I don't think that was representative. And when, good 911 SC coupes were $15,000 5 years ago, that didn't make sense either. And so now when they're 35, that doesn't bug me. That car represents, to me, $35,000 of value, right? So we have that. The other thing that's cool about Porsche that's very unique is that our cars have global demand and we appeal across all ages. So what do I mean by that? Collectible cars, or just passion for cars in general, is generally based on the idea that people buy cars that they feel good about some certain period of time in their life. And for the most part, that's formative years. That's age 12 to 25. We all want to relive this dream that we were way cooler than we were, or there was some rich kid in our school whose dad clearly probably had a drinking problem and was cheating on his wife, so he bought his kid some new, whatever, right? We always wanted to be that kid. And then we go to the high school reunion, and he's still living with his dad in the basement. And we realize we actually progressed in our life, he didn't, but somehow we still want to have that car again, right? And what's unique, though, about Porsche is that experience holds true for kids in the United States. It holds true for kids in Australia and Japan and Germany and Austria and all over the world. That's not the case with 69 Camaros. A kid in Japan didn't lay on his bed and think, oh, I gotta have a 69 Camaro, right? And so our cars are in demand everywhere, and with the spread of information, these cars can kind of liquidly move anywhere the market's good. So I think if you start thinking that way, there's a lot more eyeballs than there are cars, and so that's good. And the other thing is it appeals across all ages. So I can take one of my cars out, and I'll have 15-year-old girls who like my car, I've got 60-year-old guys, I've got 40-year-old guys, I've got some 80-year-old lady who's winking at me. It's kind of unique, right? Whereas, because I love my dad, and I think he must have suffered some sort of brain aneurysm at some point, but he used to like Porsches, and now he's in the Ford V8 club. So every year I help my dad, and we prepare his car to compete at the National Ford V8 Club thing, right? Wow. So I go, and there's nobody there outside of 65 to 90. I mean, nobody. There's no 25-year-old hipster with a man bun showing his Ford V8. He is not there, right? But yet you go to a 356 event even, you've got the 90-year-old guy with a walker who bought his car new, and you've got the 25-year-old hipster with the man bun who's sipping some sort of drink that you can't even pronounce, right? It's cool. I mean, it's different. You don't have that in other genres. So that means our market has some legs. Again, we're going to be in a plateau phase, slow growth, that's good. The true #1 cars and the very rare submodels will still see strong price growth. And this is simply because in our market today, our global economy, there's just too damn many rich people. There's a lot of money out there. And so the best analogy I can give is I've got a client of mine who's got a very, very, very particular set of criterion for cars. And he only wants original cars. And so let's say, for example, I had a 993 like this. Okay, his criterion, it has to have 4-digit mileage, has to have 100% original paint, has to have all its documentation. And let's say if that car, like a driver quality car, is worth, say, 100 as an example, you could tell him if the car met his criteria, he paid $300,000 for it. He doesn't care. He just wants what he wants. But yet if you said, I can tell you one that's almost as nice for 50, he doesn't care. He's not interested. And so that's where you're going to start seeing this real spread between the cars. The other thing is the European market's going to come back. Through 2015, the way it worked, if you wanted to sell a car to Europe, Franz would call you. You could have some broken English, and money showed up the next day, and no questions asked, and the car was good. And you could sell every car you ever had to a European buyer. And I actually made a business decision 5 years ago that I don't sell cars to Europe. And not because I don't like Europeans, that's where we come from, but is that, my business is basically reselling the same cars over and over. So if it goes to Europe, I don't ever get it back. So, my case in point, Larry is the one who invited me out here, and I've sold 4 of Larry's cars for him, and one of his Targas I've sold 3 times since I got it from him. So it's a little bit incestuous in my business, right? Porsche buyers tend to have ADHD, and they think this is the last and best one they'll ever buy, and then 6 months later they want something else. But yeah, the European market's coming back. They're starting to buy some cars again, not the same frenetic pace, but they are. And then the other thing is you're going to see some drop in value for the subcar. Again, the shiny turds, these cars are a little bit exposed. So next one, Larry. Okay. So what does that mean for you? #1, if you learned nothing else from my presentation, do not buy a Porsche as an investment. I'll repeat it one more time. Do not buy a Porsche as an investment. If you don't love it, if the values, something happens with it, you're in trouble. If you love it, it doesn't matter. I've got a whole garage full of Porsches I've been buying over the last few years. And particularly the people that are new to the market come, oh my God, you made all these cars. And I said, I don't care what they're worth. They're kind of like my children, They can be worth $5. I also have cars in my collection, non-Porsches, that are probably worth about $5 that I love just as much. You know,
48, maybe?
not 48. But I have a passion for other goofy stuff. Like I like Volkswagen vans, I like old Saabs, and I like diesel Mercedes. Go figure it. So I have a Mercedes 240D that's probably worth like $2,500, and it has 48 horsepower, and I love it. I don't know, weird. So the other thing is, but if you buy wisely, you limit your exposure to wide swings in values, so that you kind of learn a little bit. The other thing that's nice, in a steady market, you can take your time to make a better purchase. So the thing I hated about 2015 was that I saw some of the worst buying decisions I've ever seen for people. I mean, friends of mine and people I know would come over and they'd bring a shiny turd over, and I would literally be cleaning the vomit out of my mouth as they pulled up, and I'd say, "What did you buy?" "Well, this car popped up for sale online in Atlanta, and the guy said he had like 10 people, so I just wired him money." Wow, and this is what you got. So the good news is, it's not the last one they ever made, so take your time, breathe, make a good decision. And then last point, stop obsessing about values and just enjoy the cars, right? So my other piece of homework for you guys is a region here. You guys are the ambassadors, so at the next event, when you're there, 10 years ago, if you were at an event, people would be talking about, "Oh, I'm changing out my suspension, I'm doing an overhaul, I got this weird oil leak I'm chasing, my battery keeps going flat, I'm taking my car to the track." We'd have all these kinds of conversations. Now where everyone sits around, "Well, Bob, do you know what your car's worth now?" Like, this is the whole damn conversation we're having. It's boring, I'm tired of it. So you can be ambassadors, so when people have that conversation, your job is just to change the topic. And let's talk about the fun stuff. Driving our cars, using our cars, wrenching on our cars, doing that. So, next slide, Larry. Okay, so pricing. The first key of setting a price is knowing what you have. Of course, that seems so obvious. When we do hands-on, we'll go more into it. This really means fully understanding, where does your car live in Porsche history, the general pros and cons of a model, and its relative desirability. So for example, if you have an IMS era car, well, you better know that's one of the potential pros or cons of that car. You better have an answer when people either are calling about your car and you're selling it, or if you're looking to buy one, what questions to ask, right? Understand how to grade a car. So how does your car fit in the matrix of things? Is your car a 4? Is it a 2? Is it a 7? Right? We'll talk about that next slide, Larry. Okay, so let's talk really quick about grading. This is using the Haggerty scale. Haggerty uses a scale of 1 to 4, and the thing I don't like about the 1 to 4 scale is that we always tend to think that we're better than we are. Our children are the smartest and cutest, mine are, and our cars are better than anybody else's, and so people look at this scale and they say, well, if 1's the best and 4 is the worst, well then my car's a 2. Oh, no, not really. So the best way to describe a number 1, that's the nicest example of a given car in the world. This is the car you've actually never seen. The best way to describe a 1 is someone starts with a number 2, and someone with really, really, really bad OCD commits their life to preserving and working and wrenching and improving this car. It's better than it was the day it was delivered, right? So I call this the unicorn. It's never seen in the wild. A grade 2 is the nicest one you've generally seen. This is the person that when you come to a club event and this car pulls up, literally just, God, I'm not going to win again, right? This guy's garage, he's got every trophy known to man since 1992 on this car. Okay, so this is the grade 2 car. A grade 3 car is the very nice PCA member-owned car. This is the one where your neighbor swears you're going to wash the paint off it. You cleaned it so many times. They think it's perfect. You can spot some flaws. Your friends in the Porsche Club can spot some flaws, but it's a really, really nice car. This is actually the best car to own. This is nice enough you can enjoy, take to events, but if you get a rock chip, you don't have to hire a therapist. True number 1 cars, I've got a couple of true number 1 cars, and they're actually, I don't know what you do with them. I mean, it's kind of fun. A grade 4, this is just your typical used car. It's not a bad car. It's a running, driving, legitimate car. The problem with the scale is people think if 4 is the bottom, that's the worst. No, you can be below a 4. That's just the grade at which we consider something collectible. So a car can be a 5, 6, 7, 8, right? There's plenty of cars that are grade 5 and below. Okay, next slide there, Larry. Okay, so as an example, I just took some pictures. This is kind of fun. So a true number 1. This is underneath my '88 Carrera that I won at grade 2 or a 3. That's a car you can use, but not a perfect car. That's good. Okay, next slide there. Here is a car I just liked because it was, to me, what a survivor. This was a car I was offered, and stupid me, I didn't buy it, 11,000 miles, 74. And this is how when I first found it, it was just in a garage with boxes and crap piled around it, but it was fundamentally still a good car. The guy who beat me to it or made a smarter decision, it showed up, it works, and there it was. So I mean, it was, but you could tell fundamentally it was a good car when it was found, you know, and it wasn't an abused car. Next slide, Barry. Now this is an example of the typical, you know, this gal called me and she had this very rare car she wanted me to come buy from her. And she said she's loved on it, and if I just put a battery in it, it would start right up. And she said, well, if you don't buy it, I've got like 4 people that are going to come over and pay me all the money for it. Okay, no problem. Okay, setting a fair price. Number one, it's not an exact science. We'll attempt to have a science here, but we'll get some guideposts on it, but it's not exact science. The big key is doing some research. You know, all these cars really have a nationwide market. You know, if you're selling a 2012 Honda Accord, you know, people are going to go maybe a 100-mile radius. If you're shopping for a 920 S4, people are going to look nationwide. So that's where you want to do your research. Subtle differences make a large value difference, and that's key to know. So, like when we talk 993s, we'll talk about what drives value on 993s, and it's some things that you would think and some things that you may not think of. So what you want to do is you want to be studying the market for a long period of time. Whether you're a buyer or a seller, don't buy the first car you look at. And when in doubt, consult an expert. And that might be either someone who's in the business or it's just sort of your local group of people here. The other thing with pricing is too high is just as bad as too low. One of the problems in a fast-moving market like this is everyone is afraid of being that dummy who undersold their car, or the dummy who paid too much for their car, right? It's kind of like when you go out and buy a new family car and you're at the Super Bowl party and you always got to tell your neighbor how much you paid for it, and everybody lies. Kind of like that, right? Because no one wants to be the schmo who paid too much at the local Chevy store. Similar kind of thing. Next one, Larry. Okay. So a lot of people always ask me, they say, well, if that's the case, why can't the darn value guides be better? You know, why can't they be more accurate? Well, one, the market's moving so fast they can't possibly keep up. Two, most of the sales happen behind the scenes. We don't know what really needs sold for. And they can only hit the averages, so they can't, for example, pick out the nuances of why that car is worth more because it's this color than if it were Arctic silver, right? The guide can't pick all that stuff up. So they're really good for average cars, but the best of all of them is Hagerty. And Hagerty puts a lot of resources behind their evaluation guide. Most people think the Hagerty numbers are too high. It's usually because people overvalue their car. They say, well, the number one says it's worth $250. There's no way. I'm like, yeah, but you're not looking at it at a number one. You're looking at a 3, and the number there is 85. Okay, that looks better, right? The one thing Hagerty has going for them is they do get a lot of the back-end data because people are insuring for what they paid, so you get a better idea of what the real numbers are. Okay, next one. Okay, so factors affecting price. One of my pet peeves. So mileage. In general, we as Americans, we obsess about mileage. The lower the mileage, the higher the price. Simple, right? Cars post-1999, these are cars that have a DME that stores mileage as well as a digital odometer. You almost never find mileage issues. Older model Porsches, the number of cars where the mileage is not accurate is so rampant, it's truly laughable. I mean, laughable. And the reason for that is if anyone knows any of these generation cars, they have mechanical odometers that break, they have these little plastic gears that break. They've got 5 digital odometers. Prior to 1976, they used 5 digital odometers. 911 ST era, in the late 930s, we used 85 mile-an-hour speedometers, which nobody could tolerate, so those went missing. You know, like case in point, any Bring a Trailer fans on here? Okay, we got a few. Okay, so if you're not familiar, Bring a Trailer is a great site, and we'll talk a little about it later, where they auction cars. But there was a 21,000 mile 87 911 Targa listed on there last week. And every so often, if I'm feeling in the mood, I'll commentate on something. And the seller was going on and on about 21,000 miles, and people were all excited. And I look at the pictures, and you look at the odometer, and the odometer that's in the car is not even the correct odometer. It's out of an early 930. And I just pointed this out. I said, that's not the odometer the car would have been delivered with. Do you have any record as to why that is? Oh, no, but I know that's the right mileage. Well, by very definition, if the odometer that's in the car is not the one it was delivered with, and you don't have any documentation, it's a true miles unknown car. So my comment was simply that it doesn't make it a bad car, but then you have to buy it on the merits of what the car is. Don't pay the premium for 21,000 miles. But somebody paid the premium for the 21,000 miles, because they just want to think that's what it is. So documentation is key. What I want to see, ideally, is unbroken chain of documentation. This is where it came from, and this is all the mileage, and it adds up over time. Okay, I'll buy into that. The other thing is cars' condition should be reflective of mileage. One of my more fun ones, I was at Scottsdale, this is 4 years ago, and there was a 71 911 E-Targa, and at that time I had a 71 E-Targa. So I was really interested. I like original cars, and it was purported to be a 5,000 original mile car. So I kind of made a notation I wanted to go see this car, and so I saw it from across the parking lot, and I went from running to kind of a slow jog. By the time I got to about the 50-yard line, I was like, huh, okay. So I get there, and the car's got a really bad respray on it, like 5,000 miles, and so I'm like, what's with the respray? Well, of course, the story was the original owner, his daughter took the car out, let the boyfriend drive it, dad was out of town, supposedly they damaged it, they quickly repainted it so dad wouldn't notice, as if he wouldn't notice the real shy paint job. So I'm already smelling BS in the water. And then I open the door, and now this is at one of the best auction houses, and the car is being represented by a very well-known person, let's say that. And anyone have early 911s in here? Okay. Early 911s have this rubberized floor mat that's about 14 inches thick, I swear to God. It weighs like 100 pounds, right? And the first thing I noticed when I opened the door is the rubber floor mat underneath the accelerator pedal is worn all the way down to the floorboard on a 5,000 mile car. I actually felt bad. I thought they've got restless leg and they've been. We should have some empathy for these people, right? But it's funny stuff like that because then the car brought all the money because someone in their head thought that was real, and it's so just know, always suspect mileage. Every 911 SC in the world has 74,000 miles. Not possible. The cool thing though is if you have a 73 or older car, be it 911 or 356. You have the ultimate because nobody cares what the mileage is on your car. It's irrelevant. There's an honesty in that market, particularly in 356, which says, the odometer says 22, 810, but is that 122, 222, 722? Nobody cares. They just realize I'll pay it based on what I see for the car. So unless you get the really rare, you can actually prove it, hey, go drive the car as much as you want. Doesn't matter. And then again, condition trumps mileage. Don't just buy the odometer, buy the condition of the car. So this one was funny. This was also down in Scottsdale last year. This was a 69 911T with 15,000 miles. It was only driven in rally stages.
How much hate mail did you get?
What's that?
How much hate mail?
Oh, I don't know, but this one just, honestly, it's hard because I get pissed off because I think and he wanted like $125,000 for this car. I'm like, how could you possibly think that's a 15,000 mile car? That's a 215,000 mile car. I mean, I've got a 71 911E that has almost 200,000 miles, all original paint, and it looks 100 times better.
Did it sell though?
He struggled. He brought his price. And I think last I saw he was down like 85, which is still too much money for it. But so odometer swap. I sold a 8,000 mile 911 SC not too long ago, and those came with those stupid Carter era 85 mile an hour speedos. And what I liked about it is it was documented correctly that it was swapped when it was new. So there was a sticker in the door that said, hey, on June 4th, 1980, it was swapped, and the car had 149 miles. And then it was also stamped in the book with the dealer stamp. Okay, I'm okay with that. I can feel good about that. And the condition of the car stood up. But without that, I wouldn't have liked that. Okay, rarity. As a general rule, lower production submodels command a premium. Straightforward. A 4S is generally going to bring more than a base Carrera. Straightforward. But if you're trying to figure out which ones are worth more, a mechanically different car would be worth more than one that's just aesthetically different. So perfect example, I just bought an 80 SC Weissach edition car that I'm going to be selling here shortly. It's a cool car, but I'm also not naive to think that it's going to bring, huge premium over a regular SC, whereas a car that had, for example, a unique motor on it would bring more. So if you think like 74 US Carrera is worth a lot less than a 74 Euro Carrera, which got the MFI motor. Totally different world. The other kind of fun one is that sometimes we have a model that's rare due to low desirability. And so people will say, oh, it's rare. And I say, well, it's rare because nobody wants it. That would be the 77 Targa Sportmatic, right? I mean, it is rare. I mean, it's really rare. The other thing is you always have your outliers, which are your special wishes cars, cars with racing history, celebrity ownership, prototypes. Those are total outliers. Okay, what else we got there, Larry? Okay. Oh, this is a fun one. Ownership. We have this fascination, along with mileage, is one owner. We love one owner cars, right? There's this passion. The joke is, though, it could be the worst one owner in the world, but we'll pay a premium for it, right? Now, the holy grail is that if the one owner happens to be a doctor, boy, you get the trifecta. Ooh, like doctors are better people. They're biologically better people than engineers or, heaven forbid, a plumber or something, right? Yeah, I just think it's funny. One doctor owner. Cool. I want to list a car. 7 blue-collar owners. That's going to be my next ad copy.
Only one of them buy my TV.
Yeah, like, come on now. We love low ownership is best. It's not fair or unfair, but when we say a car has got 11 owners, we just somehow wonder why. What I like is unbroken chain of documentation. If you read my documentation article, I just want to know where the car went, who had it, and what happened to it. I just gave this presentation on the East Coast, and they did boo at me, but we love our cars from the West Coast. Anyone who's ever lived on the East Coast knows why. They look like that 89 Speedster I showed earlier. So what I should have said is the trifecta really is the one California Dr. Owner.
San Diego.
Yeah. Or as Ron says, one Diego. The other thing is we have a thing about clean title. It makes a big difference. Carfax is a crock of crap. It's not worth the paper it's printed on, but the market believes in it. So with that said, if there's anything negative in your Carfax, it's going to really affect your value. So run one when you buy a car. If you read the disclaimer in Carfax, I got to give them some kudos. It says, of information reported to Carfax and deemed reliable. What does that even mean? So basically, if you didn't get the information or you didn't deem it reliable, never mind, it's not worth it. But just know people put a lot of stake in that. And then in salvage title, if you have a salvage title, it's always a hit to value. Everyone's got a good story about they only replaced the taillight. I don't care what the story is. The market doesn't like salvage title. It's just the way it is. Okay, there's my article on documentation, so kind of a fun one. I did a presentation like this, and a gentleman volunteered his car at parade, and I was asking about history, and he said, oh, well, hold on, and he pulled out this mic. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it was right down to, it had the menu of the food the guy ate the day he picked up the car. Yeah. Porsche people are weird. Okay, so next one there. So yeah, you can kind of see, and he had a log of every gallon of gas and everything he'd ever done, and I mean, it was definitely cool. Okay, so factors affecting price. Options make a big difference. Color, that's my article this month. Color makes a big difference. And again, color preferences have changed over time. So there were colors you could not give away back in the day that people will give their left arm for now, right? Things change, right? Color and options can make as much as a 1 or 2x difference in price. So from a highly desirable color to a less desirable color, or a very unusual set of options can make a big, big difference. In general, the more highly or unusually optioned a car, the more desirable. But if you're having to pick, performance options have a better ROI than trim options do. So for example, if you're speccing out a new GT3 and you're thinking about value in the future or a new Porsche, sport exhaust will give you a better return on your investment than leather sun visors. I love leather sun visors, pretty awesome, but they're not going to have great ROI. And the other thing is, prior to PDK, anything with 2 pedals is going to sell at a significant discount. And that's not making a value judgment, I don't have a problem with them, but just that's what the market says. Once you get the PDK era, it's so well accepted, there's no value difference really between a PDK or a 6-speed car. It's just what people want. Okay, so again, this is the color story. kind of a fun one to put together. And just sort of a visual and options, you know. Painted hardback sports seats on a 993, very good. Tiptronic and a 997 twin turbo, not so good. From a value, not necessarily value of the car, it's a fine car. But, okay, so condition. So again, grade obviously makes a big difference. We'll go through this on this car in person. We'll talk a little bit about a PPI, so I won't get into that now. A lot of people think that if you're buying a car or selling a car, you have to make a deduction for anything that needs to be remedied. Not necessarily true. The car is kind of worth what it's worth. And then the other thing that makes a big difference is weird as we are about documentation and our doctor owners, we love all the crap that doesn't matter one bit about the car, but if we don't have them, we get all worked up about them. Right? These are the toolkits, the air pump, the window sticker, the books, the keys, all that stuff. We love, I call them tchotchkes, that's the little term I give them. We love our tchotchkes, right? So next one here, Larry. So, funny story. So these are some photos. As I was prepping one of my cars for parade, I thought, you know, my web guy says I should have a better social media presence, so fine. So that's what I was working on the day I was prepping my accessories for the show. So I took some photos. I'll go back that way. Anyway, so I took these photos, and I do have a personal Facebook page. I don't ever post on it, and I have a work one, right? And because I'm not social media savvy, I took these photos and I accidentally put them on my personal page, which I only communicate with guys that I work out with, you know, the guys that I run with and do these obstacle course racing. And so immediately I get flamed. They're like, "What the hell is this? Like, why would you post tools? like why do you spent hours prepping tools?" And like they literally just flamed me, right? So sorry. So I deleted that and I moved it over to my work page. It was like it was in a whole new world. It was the most popular post I'd had on my page all year. Oh! Now, Nate, can you tell me the marking on that screwdriver? Does that say Klein or and like all these questions about the toolkit? And so it's like the same post, different audience. Us weird people got it. Normal people were like, this makes no sense. I mean, because it doesn't change your car one bit whether you have the emergency sunroof tool. I mean, you're never going to use it, right? But in fact, what's funny is, who in here has my same story? So I have my perfect toolkits in my car, and then I actually carry my own toolkit when I travel with non-Porsche tools if I actually have to work on them. Right? Because I would not actually use the factory toolkit. I wouldn't want to mar one of those special selected steel wrenches, right? So, okay, next slide here. Okay, so factory price, originality. Again, along with our California one owner with all the tchotchkes, we want an original car. Fair or not fair, they're worth the most original, and they're easiest to sell. And I think the best way you can think about this is that if your car is original, people can't argue with it. It just is what it was supposed to be. It doesn't become a value judgment. If you have a modified car, then some people like it, some people don't. It's more divisive. And so if it's original, it's just the way it came. If you have modifications that are easily reversible, I would suggest you reverse them. Here's my trade secret, I'll give it away free. I spent my whole life taking cars and taking out all the stuff that we did to them back in the day. Like, this is my life, putting on 3-spoke steering wheels and old Blaupunkt radios that sound like them. This is my job, right? And so that's just kind of the way it works. So if you want to improve your sale price or decrease your market time, take it back to original. If you've done non-reversible modifications, one, I would encourage you to do that. I think that I have cars I've modified beyond recognition, but I recognize when I went down that path, I was diminishing its market space. Right? It's fine. That's how we should do it, but just recognize that you're doing that. It's your car. Please do. The other thing is, the lower the grade, the lower the difference makes. I get lots of emails because I also collect parts from friends of mine or people I know, and they say, "Hey Nate, I'm looking for, you know, right, the correct 10,000 volt screwdrivers for my 72 R group style hot rod." It makes no sense. Nobody cares for a hot rod 911 you have the right handled screwdriver that you spend $600 for. Now, if you're taking a car for true number one, you're going to parade, yeah, it matters. So think about the grade of your car, if it matters or not. Next one there. So yeah, this is just kind of funny. I went and put this Blaupunkt CR in a 78 930 I recently sold, and it sounded truly abysmal. I mean, like unlistenable. But I got so many compliments. Ooh, it has its original radio. I go, yeah, you should see the really flashy Alpine I pulled out of it. Here's the CR I put in. So, okay. Okay, paint. This, but people get mixed up with this all the time. I also had a guy pull me aside at the presentation who's got a 911 SC, he's had for 20 years. He loves the car, and he wants to get more serious about taking it to track. And he says, well, should I sell it and get a less nice car? And I said, well, what did you pay for it? He paid like 12 grand back in the day for it. I said, why would you sell the car? You only in it $12,000. You know the car. It's a known good car. You're going to sell it. By the time you mess around with it, spend the same money to get a less of a good car. I go, just make it what you want. And then when in doubt, enlist the help of a trusted advisor. And the cool thing about the PCA, that's the beauty of this room right here. There's lots of expertise in this room. So enlist the help of people that have that car. That's kind of the beauty. So next one there later. Okay, and then if you're going to look or sell a car, this is the same with buy or sell. So number one, I always look to the PCA. Basically, usually if you want something or want to sell something, just put the word out among this group. It's amazing how often you just mention, hey, I'm looking for this, and next thing you know, someone calls and says, well, my neighbor has this car, or whatever. Same thing with selling cars, same kind of thing. We can use some reputable dealers. I always jokingly say we didn't get a bad reputation for nothing, so there are far less reputable of us than there are not reputable, but there are some good ones out there. The other thing is a lot of times we get a lot of people that assume a private party is always more honest than a dealer. I don't find that to be true. I find the difference is sometimes it's a question of honesty versus ignorance. And what do I mean by that? Ignorance not as an insult, but a lot of times you have a person who's got a car, and if you've ever been in the medical world, they talk about studies. A study, they always use the N value. How many patients were in a study? So sometimes a person who's got a car, they have an N value of, this is the only 993 they've ever driven. So I drove one the other day, and the clutch pedal literally engaged about 5 millimeters off the floor, and it was like you were at the gym doing a leg press. The guy says, yeah, it's a really heavy clutch. No, like something's wrong with your car. So you'd buy that car from him, and he would think it's okay because he just doesn't know anybody. He's never driven another one. He just thinks that's how they all are, right? So sometimes you buy for someone who doesn't have any broad experience. They may not be trying to be dishonest, they just don't know any better. So something to think about. The other thing about is auctions. I have the word proceed with caution. We'll just say that politely. Usually if you have a shiny turd, an auction sometimes is a good place. So they always say, good cars can be sold at auction, but every bad car is also sold at auction. It's like, so just be cautious there. And the other thing is know your audience. So there's a lot of online venues in particular. So if I'm selling a 356, I don't probably want to list that on RenList, right? I want to list it on 356 registry. Or if I got an early 911 registry is a great place for it. And some of the big sites are also good. Some of the clearinghouse sites, Auto Trader. Bring a Trailer has been a great one. Lately, they've done really, really well selling Porsches. If you haven't checked out that site, you'll lose days of your life looking at it. So with that, Larry, let's see here, I think. And we're going to take a little break here, I think about 15 minutes to go try out that combo, and then we'll do a hands-on presentation with the car. So, thank you guys. So we'll take a 15-minute break, and so
we're going to take a 15-minute break and keep going.
Meet back here.
Meet back here, yeah. If you're going to use the bathroom over